moment and just kind of acknowledge the huge crowd that turned out for this event. I have a list of those who RSVP'd. We've got the African Center for Evidence represented, Bridge, CASME, Data Innovator, a large group from DPME, including our current SAMEA chair, Victor Naidu. Welcome. Acitej South Africa, JET, Kulisa, MIET Africa, PDG, USAID, and WITS and Zenex. And then there's a range of people who didn't put an affiliation, or we couldn't deduce the affiliation from your email address. So since there's so many people on the call, I thought what we can do is we can just introduce ourselves, especially if your organization or affiliation wasn't mentioned now. Why don't you just pop a message in the chat and tell us who you are, where you're from. And it's also nice to see the very many different locations that we are all connecting from. So I see we've got KZN represented, Oudtshoorn, iSchool Africa, ORT South Africa, LASIK Education, Swellendam. Nice, I'm in Cape Town and missing places like Swellendam and other kind of close enough holiday destinations right now. The Da Vinci School of Business Leadership, Wits School of Governance, MIET Africa, Royal Bafokeng Institute in Rustenburg. Hello, Tsolofelo, as you said earlier. Teach a Man to Fish, KZN, Protec, and several others that I've already acknowledged. Sparrow Combined School. Hello, Kathy. I think I've encountered you elsewhere before. Yeah, and the Principals Academy. Welcome, everybody. It's really lovely to have such a big and representative group on the call today. Just a little house rule before we start is to ask you to all mute your microphones. Many of you have done so already. It just helps with background noise interference when somebody is speaking. So unless you yourself are speaking, please mute your microphone, which you will find, for those of you who are still new to this, in the left bottom corner. And then I just want to open from SAMEA's side to say we are very excited about this TIG initiative. Benita Williams, who's a very active contributor to SAMEA and a former board member, approached us with the idea and was quick to get a range of important players on board to join us today as well. The SAMEA Research and Learning Portfolio, which I lead, has, among others, the following objectives, and you will see how relevant this is to the TIG that we're launching today. Firstly, to foster a culture of critical thinking and free exchange of ideas among M&E practitioners, and to facilitate the growth and advancement of the M&E sector to drive change, and also to respond to change in South Africa and the world, and to ensure that as we generate research and lessons and information, that we share that widely and openly among ourselves as M&E practitioners, and maximize the accessibility of the content, and also that we influence the research agenda to make sure that what we research and what the kind of knowledge generated in the M&E space serves the developmental needs of our country and our continent. And so I believe the TIG has the possibility or the potential of helping us to achieve many of these objectives. But you'll also notice that we've been quite deliberate in keeping the exact nature of what we will do together as a TIG open-ended, because that is up to the TIG members to decide and also to volunteer to then help to realize. So today this will be a highly interactive session, and we are hoping that also this will remain a highly interactive TIG where we take collective action and make things happen collectively, not just a one-way information sharing session, but really something where we co-create that which is needed in this very unprecedented season in the M&E sector and in the education sector. So with that little introductory comment from me, I'd like to hand over to Benita Williams to share a bit more of the vision for this TIG.
Hi, yes, it's lovely to see so many of you, even if I can't see your faces, it's lovely to see so many of you around the table, around the conversation. Like most of you, are trying to adjust to working producing reports for deadlines, making sure my kids are homeschooled, doing the work that my domestic worker, I love my domestic worker, used to do. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's already on our plates, and this is a really difficult time to adapt. But on top of that, I thought, well, you know, let's do some volunteer stuff. Why not? All right. So, because I think it's important. We're in a very specific time in history, and there's an opportunity that we might not have. We haven't had this kind of opportunity in the past, and I see so many people are trying to jump up and do stuff, and I want to help. I think evaluators have an important voice. We have an important role to play, and we need to help. We like evidence. We know how to talk about stories. We understand a little bit about valuing, right? All of these fights that we have about economy versus health, you know, tobacco sales and, you know, health, you know, all of these topics that people are fighting about. I think evaluators have something to offer. So the idea with this TIG, previous TIGs at SAMEA got started, and they were lovely for exchange and capacity building, and certainly we want to make sure that that continues to happen. But I want to challenge you to get involved and see what else we can produce. Let's co-create, let's figure out how we can help, let's figure out who the people and the connections are that we need to link to make sure that, you know, the evaluation profession's ability to stop, reflect, learn is also brought into the efforts in the education sector. Why the education sector? It's where I work and where my networks lie. I think, Cora, next, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, we need a food security TIG as well. I think we need to make that happen too. But let's start with the education TIG. Let's see how it goes. And I'm very excited about the possibilities that lie ahead.
Benita, I think you can move straight on and take us into our first discussion point, which is how can evaluators help?
Right. So in the last webinar that SAMEA hosted, we had some really nice ideas about analysis that evaluators can bring to the table, data collection that they can bring to the table, asking the difficult questions, fitting into the monitoring systems. I think it's important for us to get a little bit of a sense of how evaluators can help. I'm going to pull up a slide so I can start taking notes. Right. I don't know, would you like to type comments in the comment box? And as they come up, I will try to type them up and maybe also invite you to comment on those. So how do you believe can evaluators help the education sector response in South Africa? Maybe to start the conversation, I can invite somebody to not type, but just give us a bit of an input. Are we seeing any comments here? Eleanor, can I maybe call on you? You were the previous education, SAMEA education TIG leader. How do you think we can use this TIG to help, or how can evaluators help the education sector response?
Okay, I'm happy to just kind of jump in with a few ideas. Look, the previous education TIG, it was quite a long time ago that we were active, I suppose, and it wasn't that active, but maybe we needed something to stimulate us and to motivate and drive us, and this is presenting such an opportunity. I mean, I think as Benita said, we love evidence, and we have tools that can be used to gather evidence, and a lot of actors in the education sector are motivated on, are like prioritized and focused on doing things right now and trying to reach people who aren't in school, like to reach children who aren't in schools, and what are the changes, what does this mean? And there's potential, you know, we can stand back a bit and reflect, and we can probably help with maybe developing some common indicators for what are things that need to be measured. Importantly, I mean, we know that there are issues around the majority of children in South Africa don't have access to the internet. So how are they, who's being reached, who's not being reached? And what kind of education are children getting that don't have that access? So that's one of the critical things. So we could help with doing some measurement around some of these key things that could help inform responses to address some of the priority issues.
It's a really nice idea. So we can work on common indicators, we can figure out like reach, we can make sure that we've got an equitable distribution, that we've got responsive needs, that so there's a whole range of indicators beyond the normal effectiveness, efficiency, you know, relevance indicators that come from the OECD DAC criteria. So there's maybe a slightly different response required at this stage. Gail, I think you said the NECT and the DBE is talking about setting up an intelligence network, immediate feedback from schools. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Hi, Benita. Hi, colleagues. They're talking about two things. The one is an intelligence system, and they use the health intelligence system as an example now, where you're getting immediate feedback around COVID cases where they are. But what could that look like for the education sector? So to sort of help the DBE, and I suppose that's at district, province level, to respond quickly. That's the one thing that came up in a briefing with the education department. The second thing are, what are the big questions we want answered at a national level? And that's more the M&E. Like, I mean, Fatima, you can come in here. It's questions about, well, the recovery plan, you know, what worked, what didn't work, and what's the outcomes, you know, what have been the learning losses? You know, we know that, you know, about curriculum coverage and learner backlogs, but what has been the additional effects of COVID? So more understanding the problem and then looking at the outcomes of different programs that have been put in place. Mm-hmm. But they're talking system level, not project level. Yeah.
I think that is a very, very important point. I think it's a discourse in the evaluation community internationally and also growingly in South Africa, that the time for focusing on ETBT projects and just the outcomes that an ETBT project is delivering is not going to get us anywhere. We need to start thinking about transformation. We need to start thinking about how are we going to make the big changes? How are we going to coordinate? Again, those kind of initiatives, different kind of indicators are required, different kind of methods are required. And I'm hopeful that there's some people in this group that have some good ideas and some knowledge that they can share with us. Let's see, Henry. All right, so Henry, tell us a little bit. You said provide evidence for education decisions. So you're a representative of a specific small, well, not small, NGO that needs to run, be responsive and start doing things. So you are saying we need, many people can help to provide evidence. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think also for, thanks very much, Benita. Yeah, not only for us as an organization with our particular project actions that we want to take, but also I think generally at a system level. So for example, we're debating now a decision about which grades should go back. And so we maybe just need some consolidation of the evidence that says what's the right grade to return. I mean, these are decisions that maybe DBE are going to be making. But I think also then just in terms of a project level decision making to say where should our focus be in terms of gauging learning losses, those kinds of things. I mean, for example, one of the things that I saw in another discussion was WCD was looking at sort of their first kind of action on return to school was to assess learners to determine that learning loss. And then you have a strategy to respond. Yeah, so those are the kinds of issues I think that we see we're having to deal with. So there's a system level response as well as a project level type response.
Thank you for that input. Just to link onto that, the idea of evidence, right? So evaluators do create evidence, and we are knowledge brokers in some instance, but there's a very large number of colleagues that do not necessarily sit around the evaluation table who should be our friends that we can help to pull into the conversation. So one of the organizations, I didn't actually see if they represented or if they made it up into the meeting, was the African Center for Evidence. They've got a big network. It was previously the African Evidence Network, right? So they're a network that focuses on the bridge between the policymakers and the researchers, right? So I think the evaluators fit in there, and I think it's very important that we build those links. Right. I wonder if there's somebody from the DPME that would like to give us a input about how they see evaluators helping. So think a little bit about that. In the meantime, I'm going to take a comment from Jerusha. Jerusha said evaluators need to play a stronger advocacy role, ensuring that rapid monitoring efforts are supported by evaluation, support the communication of the masses of data to support rapid decision making. Right, so Gail, this links onto your point that you raised that the NECT and the DBE are thinking about this intelligence system. As an evaluator, I often find that, you know, I'm busy in the the evidence production cycle, right? So I think up the questions and then I send out the survey and I get the answers and I give the answers to my client. But we're losing a lot, because if we are talking about an intelligence system, I think all of us in the organizations that we are working and representing and talking to as our clients and our friends, we all would like to see that information too. So that was part of the reason why I decided to create this TIG, because I think we need a conversation space so that if there's evidence, we can start talking about and sharing it and making sure that the evidence goes into those rapid learning cycles. So yes, if we find that what was the big question? So learning losses. If we find that we've got now our answer to learning losses, what's the next question that we'd like to answer? What's the next question? So traditional monitoring and evaluation often takes very long before it gets to the answer. And I think the time for that is gone. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us as evaluators to learn some new skills about these quick feedback loops, these agile feedback loops, developmental evaluation. All right.
Hi, Benita. Can I say something?
Yes, but go ahead.
Hi, Benita. It's Ariella from Autist A. I'd like to actually maybe from the NGO group to say where I see evaluators working with us is there is a move from our side to online learning. And as you know, the COVID-19 has created a lot of uncertainties. And what happens is that we've got a percentage of schools using online, mostly obviously the private schools, and and the kids are actually carrying on with studying, where you've got the non-private schools, government schools, or some of them complete shutdown, some of them working relatively. So for example, we're working with teachers from government schools, and they were very happy for us to work with them online. I would have loved to work with evaluators to set up the questions and the monitoring and evaluation of what we're doing. Although we really don't know, I mean, there's no experience of schools moving into online in such a fast pace. Can we work together on actually looking at the outcomes of what we're trying to do, and maybe possibly comparing it to schools that are far ahead? I don't know, I'm not coming from the research side, but I think this is where where evaluators who are willing to give their time can work with us and work together around one of these solutions, which is the remote learning.
Right, so this is one of those big questions. If we are doing online learning, are we reaching people? Is it equitable? What kinds of strategies works for whom? Right, so we're very concerned about the schools that have no access to internet, but we also cannot assume that the schools and the communities that do have access to internet actually know what they are doing. So I think the role of evaluators are to go out and figure out what people are doing. And there's different kinds of strategies for different kinds of schools. And I think evaluators have a role in trying to figure that out. All right, so just looking at some of the comments, Letitia says the quality of data is at the center of all, right? So garbage in, garbage out. If you've got a smart system, if you've got people using that data, we can definitely improve the quality of the data. Cara, you said that evaluators already assigned to working with NGOs or education initiatives can help to reflect on the original theory of change. So that's another point. Let's think about our theories of change, but also at that systems level rather than just at the project level.
Good afternoon, Benita. Sorry to interject.
Sure.
Yes, my name is Togombense. I used to attend Bridge like for a couple of years now. I just out of interest made phone calls, just checking from the learner side as to how are they going online with this. And I realized that the private schools have got into sync in with all of this. However, I checked also with school learners from Soweto, two of them differently from different schools. And I realized that the one school, the learners are getting like communication from the teachers. However, some teachers only communicate with the learners a week later or so, or alternatively, they never respond back to the kids. At the third school, the learners have not received anything. This is like the grade 6s. And the other one was, the other one in Soweto also, that was a grade 10. And the one that I'm talking about in the private school is a grade 8, whom they're doing very well. So there's a problem there whereby I don't know if the monitoring and evaluation can also look into the spaces of how often, who monitors the teachers if they are like communicating with the kids and so forth.
That's correct. So I think that's also a very specific question that an organization might have. Who has access? What kind of interaction is happening? What can we expect? Again, evaluators have a role to play to answer those questions. Let's go through some of the other comments.
Benita, can I maybe also quickly comment on something?
I'll run through the list of comments and then I'll give you an opportunity to interject when we get to the comment. Maybe that's just easier. Okay, so somebody from JET said it's time for association to association level of collaboration. I think that is very important. I don't know who from JET said that comment. If you want to give us a little bit of more comments around that. It's a comment that says association to association level of collaboration. What do you have in mind?
Thanks, Benita. It's James here. Sorry for coming in a bit late. I think my key point around that, Benita, is that we see the NGO community coming together in NASCI Association. I think SAMEA has played an important role for many years. And we can just pool our resources as opposed to having this bias of one organization trying to do something and coming with that baggage. An association is free from those politics. And I think the DBE is ready to engage us as associations. NASCI has met with the DBE minister 2 weeks ago. We're meeting again next week. And I think we're happy to pull SAMEA into that, because this is a great time to work together with you to take the M&E lead on these national processes.
Mm-hmm. That's a really nice opportunity. I think that's important. So it's about building networks and building those linkages and building the energy to get stuff done. Right, so I'm just looking at some of the other comments. All right, so there's specific comments around TVET, specifically around early childhood development. I'm sure somebody asked me yesterday, so are we also going to be worried about art in schools? I think all of these things are important and have specific questions that need to be asked. That, you know, if we've got a monitoring and evaluation system in place, people that understand monitoring and evaluation, the kind of M&E that's required, I think we can definitely make a impact. Right, so Gail just want to link up on James's comment about NASCI. Gail, you're saying you're also part of NASCI, so maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that.
I know it's just an additional, I mean, James is talking about the importance of networking and collaborating and working together. And I was just saying I mean, the NGO community in education is a big partner for funders and governments. But I would be concerned about what's happening, what's been the impact of COVID-19, and then it can be used in part for advocacy as well. And the other question I was asking, and maybe it's because, yeah, it's a funding question. Yes, it's important to cooperate and work collaboratively, but all these ideas take funding. And so that's the how to get the ideas going. And I would be keen to hear how people think that could happen in terms of then bringing the funding aspect in to do some of this work.
Right. I think that's an important question. If I may just give some thoughts about that. James just mentioned there's an opportunity to partner with organizations like NASCI and also create funding pools to say, let's set up an intelligence system, or so there's specific funding and there might be consultants required for this. The role of this group, however, is to provide the social infrastructure, right? So it's not like this group is going to go, well, we might, I don't know, we'll decide that later. We might go off and find funding for a specific project. SAMEA has done that in the past, where we find funding for a specific project with a very clear scope. But in addition to that, there's a lot of volunteer capacity that we can motivate to join in. So I think that's a good point to raise. Let's take that discussion a little bit later. Let's go back to the comments. I think, Ilse, you wanted to raise something, but I don't see your comment.
Yes, thank you, everybody. So I think my comment is more on a micro level than it is on a macro level, where I see everybody is heading towards. But I think it's very important for evaluators, specifically in a time like this, to make sure that whatever we find gets to where the change needs to happen, meaning in a teacher, in a classroom. Because I think a lot of our evaluative responses goes to higher level, and it goes to government, and it goes to circuits, and it even goes to funders, but teachers never get they rarely get the type of information they need to make changes in the way they do things in their classrooms. And I think we as evaluators have a responsibility to package our information in user-friendly ways for teachers so that they can access what we find and so that they can make changes in their classroom based on what we find. Because right now they're not interacting with any of the information that evaluators, can I say, send out there. I might not be aware of everything, but I think we have a responsibility to package what we find in a way that teachers can interact with it more in our sector.
Well, thank you for that input. I think it also links to, Henry a little bit earlier mentioned a comment that says the JET Research Bootcamp Theme 5, looking to access and engagement at teacher, learner, parent level. So this is research that came, I don't know if you're aware about it, maybe Jet can talk, James can talk a little bit about it, but this is a piece of research that I actually took and sent to my kids' school and say, you know, this is what parents feel. James, do you want to quickly say something about the bootcamp, or somebody from Jet?
If I can quickly come in. Benita, you were on the bootcamp, so you got a clear sense of what it was about. Just very briefly, we ran 12 thematic areas that are all influencing decision making in real time. We combined a senior researcher with volunteers from the country, and then peer reviewers both locally and internationally. And it's got such an amazing impact. We've got some of the reports are coming out today and tomorrow. I'm actually just blown away by the willingness of different people to contribute. We're taking the methodology into SADC from next week. So 15 countries, and the week after 54 countries in the Commonwealth. So the methodology has worked incredibly well, Benita, and it can inform some of the decisions you're making today as well.
Right, so just to clarify how this worked is Jet put this idea together. They found individuals that volunteered their time. There was a component that was funded, but they found most of the research was conducted by volunteers, volunteer peer reviewers, volunteer team leaders, and then volunteer junior researchers that were building skills. So that's an example of how a little bit of funding can quite easily make it possible for a lot of volunteer capacity to be released and to start to co-create outputs. So, right, maybe Victor, I see you, Victor Naidu said the DPME started research project to collect data to write up a country report. So this is another example of a response. So I think how SAMEA can help is to try to connect the dots between these different resources. Victor, do you want to talk a little bit about that? We still have 2 more minutes to continue this section. We move on.
I think, yeah, I think DPME is engaging in a research project to collect data on how different sectors have responded and to assess the impact of different interventions. So this TIG could help in being part of the project by providing some good objective data that is not part of government. So it will be a nice way to triangulate what the country report says and what the data that we collect as evaluators say about how government has responded and what is the impact of that response. Thanks, Benita.
Right. James just made a comment that it's great to have government and NGOs working together on evidence-based research. I think it is. There's a lot of possibilities. So the sense that I have from this conversation is that we want to help, that we can help, that there's spaces for us to help. We just need to find the right way of linking different networks, linking the volunteers and using the volunteer energy. And then, like Gail pointed out, SAMEA as an association can network with other associations that can make that can open up funding flows. So this is all very exciting. The next bit of the agenda is a brainstorm about what would we like to do and create together. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and my colleague Margie is going to take over from me.
Thanks very much, Benita. What we're going to do is really look at having some ideas and trying to do a little bit of prioritization in terms of what would we like to do and how would we like to create this? How would we like to work together on it? Sorry, I seem to have got a bit stuck on here. It should be going to another slide. Oh, sorry. One moment. There we are. Just share screen again. So we thought of a way to do this and to be able to get input from everyone, and considering there are about 70 or so people on this on this platform, is we'd like to use the Mentimeter to be able to get some input from everyone. So for people who haven't used Mentimeter before, either on your desktop or your phone, you go to the, just type in on your browser www.menti.com. You'll see it at the top of the screen there. And when you're in there, it'll ask you to put a code in. And if you put this code, 118591, you will then, on your phone or on your laptop or desktop, you will see the screen. And you'll have an opportunity to then be able to type in a response. That response, when you hit submit, will be able to come straight through onto the screen here, so everyone can see the response. And really the point is we've had a number of ideas and some really exciting ideas that have come up from the previous discussion around how can evaluators help. So we're really wanting to just look at being able to identify some actions, some points of focus. I know somebody had mentioned that in one of the chat boxes. And to try and sort of hone it in around some of the practical aspects. So I'm going to give you a moment just to be able to fill that in. Then we've got the first one that's come through around using friendly data to all levels. Is everyone all right on that? There we are, getting some more coming in. So around undertaking research and surveys, creating groups of practitioners in similar spaces, developing a common e-framework in terms of responding to COVID, I suppose identifying and asking the right questions, rapid responses, meeting to share evidence, share resources, looking at common indicators and tools. Just try and scroll down. Things around sharing learnings, pushing for open data, considering questions around how do we assess primary school learners, looking at indicators and baseline, creating easy understanding and knowledge of products. So we've had 14 responses so far. I'm going to let it just open for a little bit longer. Oh, there we're coming through thick and fast now, which is great. Looking at investigating context-specific solutions, collaborating on sourcing funds to do real-time data collection, picking up on that point around the funding and volunteering. Need to focus on classroom learning. Another one around M&E framework, but one that specifically allows for collaboration amongst different NGOs in education. Packaging the data, for example, using visuals, making it accessible to people with liabilities. And I think that also speaks to making it accessible for teachers and particularly engaging with them. Need to focus on classroom learning responses, promote evidence, platform system to recognize and consolidate volunteer, formal, informal evaluation research contributions to the COVID response, and link to badging. Okay, would anyone like to just comment on any of these? If you want to either put your hand up, use the little hand up button in the participant column on the right of your, probably on the right of your screen, so I can see if anybody would like to comment on this. Otherwise, put in the chat box.
Okay, I can't see any hands at the moment. Okay, there are a few more comments coming through. So I think the there's some practical things that are coming through that people have shared. A number of similarities in terms of looking at particular aspects based on the discussion. A lot that have focused on either developing frameworks or indicators, or really looking at methods in terms of evaluation and across the education sector. A number that are focused on collaboration and platforms, and really how do we engage and collaborate around specific big questions or challenges or aspects. And then there are a number that are also in terms of disseminating, promoting evidence, using the information that is coming through. So various things in terms of that. And there's some also around just sort of the particular practicalities of evaluation, the responses to that. I think that there's a number of things that people have put in here that we will, as the team, and I know that's going to be discussed a little bit later, but we'll look at this to be able to identify some of the particular responses and aspects. Benita or Cara, I don't know if there's anything you would like to say at this point and come in.
Yes, I think if I quickly look through the list, it sounds to me like we're talking about co-creating tools and systems and maps, right, and frameworks, right? So that's something that the evaluators can maybe come together and co-create. I think there's capacity development. It didn't come out quite that clearly from the comments, but I think there's definitely a need for capacity development so that everybody knows how to do and use these tools, systems, and maps. I think there's something about collaborating with other networks, and then there's something about advocacy. So SAMEA needs to advocate for evidence, for making sure the evidence reaches the classroom, etc. So to me, it looks at those 4 areas: tools, systems, and maps that we need to help develop. We need to do capacity development, collaborate with other networks, and start advocating. I don't know if there's high-level comments that we need to add.
Okay. Yeah. Would anyone like to say anything? I can see there are a couple of comments. Yes,
can I? So just a suggestion. I think perhaps an exercise to almost create a database of us with what we have to offer and where we're interested in supporting might help kind of coordinate all of this, because then you'd be able to see that, okay, X amount of people think dataviz is important, but there's nobody that can support it. How can we then use our network to draw on those skills? X amount of people have advocacy skills, and we need that. And then it will allow us to kind of co-create more in a more structured way, knowing what everyone has to bring to the table and what we all know the needs are. So, yeah, that's my suggestion.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are, and we'll come to that, but around establishing a listserv, and that might be the way to kick this off. But yes, to be able to have really sort of strengthen the network and being able to see who's part of it, and where we will be able to collaborate. So thank you for that suggestion. There are also a couple of things just in the comments around looking at the good practice guidelines on M&E during this time, providing guidelines for the Solidarity Fund, for example, and also one from Tamland around finding out what data the DBE and education and civil society groups need to make fast, informed decisions. What trends should be tracked, indicators for transformation. So really, once again, around collaboration and developing joint approaches. Okay, I'm going to move on to, just let me move to the next one, which is really moving on around how do we make this work. So it's looking at a couple of, of practical suggestions. These first ones that we've got is around the, how we meet as a TIG. And so once again, using your Mentimeter, you should now, if you go back into it, you should be getting the next question up there, which is around how frequently do we want to meet. So we're going to start just talking about the TIG and then talk a little bit more around the collaboration. And we've got a couple of options there, which you can vote for around the frequency. There's also an option for other, and then we'd like you to vote on here, but then to type in the chat box around what frequency you are looking for. So as you can see, the results are coming through as everyone enters it. So far, it looks like twice a month is winning. Okay, we've had 25 responses. I'm going to wait for a bit longer because there are still about 70 people on the call on this, so it'd be nice to get a bit more of a response from people. It looks like it's really around between once a month and twice a month. Twice a month at the moment is the first option. Okay. So the next question, which I'll move to in a moment, but just give people an opportunity to finish this one, is really around which platform will work best for online interaction. So on this one, you can think about how best would it work for everyone to engage, and particularly for yourself. And this is around looking at it from the existing online platforms, what you're familiar with, what you are using, and also thinking about what is the best way to make it inclusive for evaluators to participate in. So this might be, for example, with Twitter or Facebook or any other platforms that people are aware of. Okay, just was checking the chat box. Let me go through. I think we've got lots of responses on that one. Just move to the next slide. Okay, so which platform will work best for online interaction? So on here, this is going to form a word cloud. So you can put in your top ones. Everyone's got an opportunity to put their top 2 answers in or requests in. So you can do 1 or 2 responses on this. So, so it looks like most people are very familiar with Zoom. I think this change in the way that we have worked has really made us all, we've all had to adapt and get more familiar with things like Zoom. Twitter and WhatsApp are also ones that are well supported. Facebook and Teams are ways of doing it. Skype is also one that a number of people have responded to. Various ones around Google, so Google Meets, Google Classrooms, Google Hangouts has come up. Okay, so we've had 38 responses so far. Okay, so it looks like the sort of off the top here, Zoom, WhatsApp, and Twitter. So those would be sort of the three main platforms. Facebook and Skype would be, and sort of Teams would be other ways of being able to do it in terms of creating this platform where the TIG members would be able to meet and discuss. Okay, thank you for that. Right, we've got one more that and I can see there are some things in the chat box. But let me just move to the next one. Okay, I don't know, can you see that yet? Not yet. 1 second. Sorry, this is being a bit slow today of being able to do it. Okay, so the third element that we thought we needed to think about in terms of how do we make this work is around which platforms would best serve to keep SAMEA created, SAMEA curated, and uncurated resources. So this is a bit more, not so much around how we work, but how can we share resources? How could we have a repository of them? Where could they be housed so that people could upload and share resources as well as access particular resources? So these might be the resources that the TIG develops through collaboration, for example, the M&E frameworks or guidelines or tools, but also ones that may be out there internationally, or individuals or organizations would create or are using that they would like to share. So Google Drive is particular coming through, websites, Dropboxes, Microsoft Teams, SAMEA website and partner websites like Bridge. Uncurated would be Twitter ones that are out there. Bridge may be able to host some materials. Create a TIG list, which is attached. Special portals, SAMEA or Bridge. So they definitely, those seem to be the two sort of existing collaborative platforms where resources could be. Slack is also another one that allows for co-creation and collaboration. Okay, so quite a lot of that. I'm just wondering if one of the colleagues from Bridge would like to come in here and share any ideas or anything that has from their side, and then also open it to SAMEA to be able to talk about any ideas or things that they're thinking about on that.
This is Benta from Bridge. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks, Benta.
So from the Bridge side, we have the monitoring and evaluation community of practice, which takes place once a quarter. And I see opportunities for collaboration with SAMEA, where SAMEA, sort of pulls the policy high-level stuff, and then Bridge brings it down to practitioner levels. So I see opportunity for, Bridge doing a lot of advocacy at NPO level and then feeding it through to SAMEA, for, high policy level work.
Thank you. Cara, from SAMEA's side?
Yeah, we could do that. So then we would have two kind of websites. Well, we can use the SAMEA website and we could link to the Bridge repository. And we also could set up a separate listserv, email listserv, just for this TIG using the SAMEA platform, which people could, for instance, email their resources to, and then from there we curate and publish. I think maybe let's discuss. So we've got the suggestions, and we can discuss it further with Bridge and look at what other platforms. For instance, I see the Google Drive one coming up strongly. Whether we can integrate these things.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for participating in this. I think there are some clear things that are coming out from here. So yes, as the sort of initial coordinating team, we will have a look at all of this, do some analysis, and we'll be able to share the results with that, but also take it forward in terms of the discussions as Cara was suggesting. So if there are any other ideas, please just keep putting them into the group chat box. But I'm going to now hand over to Cara, who is in terms of the call to action.
Can you put that nice slide? Can you put that nice slide up with the link or the hashtag?
Okay, I will do that.
So we are almost 2 o'clock. We've discussed what we think we can do together and the many resources and potential actions that we have at our disposal. Now we need a way forward. Thank you, that's the nice slide I was talking about. Firstly, if in these 75 people, you still spotted people who are not here that you think are key players or could really benefit from this, then please invite them to our next session, and we'll update you guys by email soon on the way forward. So you can forward emails also to your friends or colleagues, other people in the space that you think need to know about this TIG and join us. We thought that the simplest way to start sharing resources right now is to use Twitter. So just use just at samea.za or _ZA and put that hashtag. Then the SAMEA account will pick it up, and we can compile them and start consolidating them for sharing. And you can also follow SAMEA to see what everybody is sending to SAMEA. So we can already start sharing resources now. And then, of course, we need people who are willing to be involved now in taking some of these ideas forward to start having collective actions. So the TIG convening committee, as Benita put it, you can put your hand up to be on that committee. Shall they? I think they can probably send their names to info@SAMEA, right, Benita? I don't suppose you want them to come straight to you.
Yes, I think that would make sense. Send the names through to info@SAMEA, and we can consolidate it there, and we'll figure out what to do with all the many people who want to volunteer there.
Dozens of people. We'll have to group them and tell some of them no, because there will be so many. Please do assist us, guys. If this stuff looks interesting to you, if you're worried we're going to do it wrong, now is your chance. Please get involved and help us to make sure that this is something really valuable for the sector and ultimately for the education sector as a whole that we've started today. And I think that's it in terms of future actions. Tell a friend, share a resource, and get involved. Yeah, so, and we say that the best way to keep you guys updated is probably through the same channels that you heard now. We advertise this on the SAMEA listserv, the SAMEA talk. If you're a member of SAMEA, you can sign up for that listserv if you haven't done so yet. You log into our website and you just sign up for it. If you're not a member, then you found out about this either through your bridge network or through DPME among each other or through some other network. So please try to stay up to date that way, and quite soon we'll have to put up a mailing list of our own, which we'll still figure out exactly how we're going to do that, so that we can all get direct communications about this TIG. But for now, just watch the SAMEA listserv. Any final words, Margie or Benita?
I think there's just a comment in there around confirming which email to use. So if you wouldn't mind just...
Sure. So if you want to volunteer, info@samea.org.za. I'm putting it in the chat right now.
Great, thank you.
That will go
and
to...
I think just... I think just... you know, the input's been really valuable. The next sort of engagement, there is the Bridge M&E COP on the 27th of May for people who are participating in that. And then after that, I think there will be another, arrangements for another TIG meeting where we'll be able to take some of this forward.
From my side, I think I was totally overwhelmed with the number of people that are interested in this. I think we've got a good thing going here. Let's try to get the momentum, and we'll be in touch. We'll let you know what happens.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day further, and we'll chat to you soon.